Well, back to the LAPD, caught, saying racist things, homophobic things, and sexist things on a recording. Put them up full mass. Here we go. Several Los Angeles police officers are at the center of a complaint alleging they made racist, sexist, homophobic comments about their own colleagues, potential recruits, and naturally LA citizens. The officers were identified by the LA Times as Sergeant Danny Jean, who is Asian, Lieutenant Louis Lavender, Black, Officer Shirley Burgos, Latina, Officer Christian Flores, Latino, and officer identified only as McKay. The report says Lavender was the supervisor and witnessed many of these conversations firsthand, but never stopped them. Quote, "Man, you're going to end up in the LA Times the way you all talking here. You all can bring down the whole department," he allegedly said in the recording. So according to the LA Times, a 10-year veteran of the Los Angeles Police Department secretly recorded dozens of conversations in the department's recruitment office between March and October 2024 that captured his colleagues making the bigoted remarks. Roughly 90 recordings reveal several officers and supervisors making racist statements and even targeting their colleagues with derogatory homophobic language, according to the Times, citing a complaint filed January 5th. According to the complaint, a Latina officer who once discussed how to physically fight Black citizens told her colleagues, quote, "You hit Black people in the liver, I heard. They got weak livers," end quote. That same female officer was also recorded telling a Black officer that, quote, "Black people like grape soda and that Black people drink Kool-Aid, go by color, not flavor," end quote. During that conversation, the Latino officer reportedly added, quote, "Black people enjoy watermelon in between basketball," end quote. The complaint states that the officer also bragged that he once called the cops on some Black children who were selling chocolate in his neighborhood, saying, "They do not belong here," end quote. The Black officer who was reportedly part of the, quote, "grape soda" conversation was also reported to have called Black people, quote, "monkeys," and would vocalize his thoughts while watching television news reports about crimes alleging or allegedly involving Black people with comments like, quote, "What's new?" and, quote, "Those people are horrible." In another conversation, the Latina officer called a female supervisor a C word and a gay B word, and also referred to a sergeant who was transferring to the recruiting unit as a little gay one, end quote. According to the complaint, that same cop often reviewed officer candidate profiles to see what they looked like and reportedly failed candidates based on their appearance. She allegedly made fun of overweight candidates and deemed some candidates as ugly and creepy. The officers also accused of making comments about deporting candidates and bragging about releasing disqualified candidates' information to other police agencies. After news of the complaint reached the public last month, LAPD Chief Jim McDonald removed a lieutenant, removed a sergeant, and removed 4 officers from the recruitment unit, saying he was, quote, "deeply disappointed by reports that certain officers were recorded making racist and offensive comments regarding department applicants." Now, I want to pause here just for a moment. Remember, their job is the recruitment division. Making decisions based on appearance, making decisions based on bias, making decisions based on if you believe they're gay or straight, etc. Wait a minute. This is the first line of how we get a good cop or a bad cop. Is based on that division. And they're making decisions seemingly based on everything but what actually qualifies you to be a remarkable cop to this community. There's more. The officer who filed the complaint initially submitted several written complaints about his work environment, but recently handed over his recordings. Quote, "I feel that I need to take a stand and say something. The officer wrote to Internal Affairs. Quote, officers and candidates are being cheated and it needs to stop. LAPD officials are reviewing the recordings to determine whether they were made illegally since California law prohibits recording a person without their consent. The recordings were also given to the Inspector General. A couple of things here. One, we owe that officer a collective thank you. Regardless of your politics, that officer should get a thank you. Because no matter what, their recruitment division will be better in the future, which means you get a better cop in the future because the recruitment division, they're not making such silly and ridiculous choices on who's recruited, predicated on bias. Number one. Number two, I've read the California law. It is going to be difficult to suggest that somehow what this officer did was not likely against the law. California law as it relates to recording is pretty absolute. But leave it up to the police division to be able to look the other way when a cop shoots an unarmed black man, to be able to utilize what's called prosecutorial discretion when a cop kills a citizen unlawfully. But it seems as if they're not trying to weigh their prosecutorial discretion as it relates to if this officer recorded legally or illegally in order to expose a deeper and more extreme crime. The officer that recorded and reported repeated offensive racial epithets and slurs concerning female officers and their sexual orientation by those who are recruiting officers to serve the city of Los Angeles should be celebrated as a hero, the complaining officer's attorney said. Instead, we now know he is being investigated by the LAPD for secretly audio recording these disgusting moments. This officer is a whistleblower, and that reported egregious unlawful conduct by his supervisors, and had no alternative but to secretly tape record the individuals to prove this conduct was occurring. That's right. The one place where refuge normally would be for a person like this, a remarkable human being that did something that is so difficult and so outside of the norm, would be the federal government. But do you think Trump's federal government is going to protect this guy? Hell no. Hell, they may charge him too. And then you have the ridiculous law where there's no carve-out in California. Obviously, we get the reason why the state legislature in California would make a law that says, hey, if you're going to record somebody, you got to let them know. Okay, that's different in other states. For example, in the state of Georgia, it's a one consent state. As long as one party in the conversation knows that the conversation is being recorded and they are in the conversation, they have to be in the conversation, that recording is pretty much legal, all right? California, different, quite different. But California could do like other states, create a carve-out. You have an extreme circumstance here. You have members of law enforcement literally breaking the law, making decisions based on protocol not affixed to their profession, and giving the citizen in that local community, and by proxy, the general community, a bad recruit. And one person had the audacity to stand up to it because their moral compass was stronger than the corruption in that precinct. Good for you. Good for you. They say the truth hurts. And a lot of times the truth hurts for the person who's telling it. And so this truth may hurt. I am hoping that his attorney is able to work out a deal. I will tell you, LAPD, they've made worse deals with worse people, believe me. All right, dear brother, thoughts here.
Well, they say snitches get stitches. In this case, they should be getting awards because this isn't a tattletale situation. This is a person telling the tale that is the truth when it comes to the LAPD. A system that is at times racist, homophobic, sexist, biased, prejudice, and all the things that government departments and those elected to protect and serve should never, never be. Now, while the recording may be in question, the audio version of it. If they did so, if this person did so with video, the video component, even if it's darkened out, then we can have a legal case in their favor. However, it is interesting that we're going to go after this person for whistleblowing and not the people that they blew the whistle on. Right. That is something we need to talk about. Also, the fact that every single officer was technically deemed a person of color, as if people of color all should be thrown in one box, as if they're all the same. We are not. There is self-hate. There is self-racism. A black person can be racist against other black people because racism is that so entrailed into our system that we can hate ourselves without even being aware of it. And sometimes that's used, it's more dangerous because it's used as a justification. Well, they did it and they're black, so then it must be okay. No, it's still not okay. I don't care who it is calling anybody a monkey, let alone a black person a monkey. That is racism in all its manners. You can be a member of the LGBTQIA community and still be homophobic in many ways. So please remove that narrative. But last but not least, we should be aware that we heard a lot of officers' names, but we also heard a lot of titles like sergeant. That's very dangerous. The sergeant was involved. And that self-prediction, you're going to end up in the LA Times. Well, guess what? You're a psychic. You ended up in the LA Times.
That's right. And I'm glad you brought that point up because you're right. Some people say, but is black people doing it? Or is people of color doing this, right? The dominant way this happens is when you take a culture and you don't integrate, but you assimilate. And through that assimilation, you then adopt the biases and stereotypes that the culture has given you. So you don't have to be a white bigot to think like one. You adopted their narrative. And that's what you're seeing. I don't give a damn what color you are, what ethnicity you are, what religion you are or are not. What I care about is the effect that you're causing. That's what I care about. And the effect is that the good people of that local community who pay their taxes and deserve to have an actual, credible, competent, and reputable law enforcement division, they won't have one as long as people are in charge of recruitment like that.